So the buyer work group meeting, basically what this revolved around is we received funding in the FSOP round for 2019 to develop an online buyer handbook as a result of articulated interest from last year's meeting. And so today's discussion was aimed at first framing that project for the group, reviewing why we were doing it, thinking about some visions for it. And then we had some updates from Vermont Produce Program on their buyer outreach initiatives to sort of share information on how one state is approaching engagement with their buyers. We also heard on the development of a state implementation matrix that's being done at Vermont Law School and the collection of detailed information around how each state is implementing the produce safety rule. And then following that, we actually broke out into two subgroups where the educators and regulators came down here to have a discussion and the buyers stayed in the room to have a discussion in order to facilitate the perspectives from both groups on what elements should be included in the buyer handbook. From the educator and regulator group, it was thinking about what have you heard from your growers, what challenges are they facing with some specificity, and how might the handbook address those needs. And then additionally, what kinds of educational outreach efforts do you have going on? And one of the things that we'll think about next year or over the course of the year is how can then we give you information about the handbook that you can share when you're reaching out to buyers. And I'll let Hans or Wes come up and emphasize anything from the buyer part because I wasn't there for that. So, but overall, fantastic conversation. This was, our funding, I like to say, is a blank slate, and we need to build this tool to serve our region most productively. So I think we got a good start to that in the conversation today.
Blank slate is a good lead off in that one of the comments was that a lot of states are doing a lot of good outreach efforts, and in our blank slate, as we fill that in, we want to make sure it doesn't, rewrite or replicate the things that are already being done. In fact, we want to emphasize working with or emphasizing pre-existing work or linking to it. So that was definitely one thing that came out. Our goal leaving was to, try to get a laundry list of really important things that might want to go in this handbook, and then how it might be presented, what things don't make sense. So, so we actually put up a bunch of stuff and it's like, does this make sense? Does it not? I don't know, this doesn't make sense. And we actually got a lot of good feedback on some of those elements. And then I think one thing I'll say is we really pushed deep into this sort of tension or conflict between building relationships from the buyer to the grower, and the time it takes to do that, and then the tension with that, which is what it really is important in authentic sort of buyer-seller buyer-farmer relationships, to having really, the importance of standardization, regulation, and having that there, and assurance, and then that kind of how do you navigate that terrain. Definitely it's not one or the other. We definitely got that one down, but there's some balance, some middle road that's important, and Wes did a great job guiding that, and maybe say a couple other things.
And keeping it on time. Yeah. A couple things we're going to have in there is PC and PSR, because there's questions among buyers and growers, the difference between the two. We're also going to have a matrix which will have down one side the different parts of an inspection or an audit and the different schemes across the top. So if a buyer wants to compare them, they can go across and compare among the different ones, and that'll include some of the audits. And we also, trying to get more buyers, we've made contact with Eastern Produce Council, New England Produce Council, and other buyers. So as we develop this, we'll be bouncing ideas off of them for a final product.